Although the Terminator franchise has hit some bumps in its most recent sequels, the original two movies remain an absolute classic for fans. They're the reason people keep coming back and watching newer installments in the franchise. That's also why it was surprising to some fans when Cameron expressed regrets with directing Terminator. James Cameron has had some hit films throughout his career, making him a well-respected director in the industry. From the award-winning film Titanic to the massive box office success Avatar, Cameron has quite the portfolio. Of course, there's also the Terminator film and its popular sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day. When you consider those two films a strong part for a franchise, it makes you wonder what he wishes was different. So what exactly did he say he regrets? In an interview with Deadline to promote Avatar: The Way of Water, he ended up also discussing the 2019 film Terminator: Dark Fate, which he produced. He talked about how stubbornly he and Tim Miller fought to bring back the original stars of the franchise. He discussed how they both had different opinions on exactly who should be brought back. Cameron stated that for the film, he wanted Arnold to return. Going so far as to say he refused to do it without the former bodybuilder. This was an understandable choice, because he had been the face of the franchise for so long. Cameron also jokingly detailed the conversation that would have ensued if he didn't bring back the OG Terminator. Miller, the director, advocated heavily for bringing back Linda Hamilton. That was also a reasonable decision. She played the protagonist of the first film, who was an iconic character in her own right, especially after the sequel. He then said that the 2019 film probably could have survived with one veteran or the other, but having both actors return turned it into nostalgia bait. He said that having 60-something and 70-something lead stars made it more of a granddad's Terminator movie. Ultimately, he felt the move he and Miller made to include both stars alienated younger audiences, who likely would not have any attachment to the original franchise stars. He didn't consider the demographics for the 2019 film, noting potential fans wouldn't even have been born for another 10 years at the time of the 1991 film.
Sí. Buenas. Se encuentra Daniela Ramos.
He also mentioned that he was in his own myopia, unable to recognize that they were setting the film up for issues, and that is where things went wrong. Perhaps the film would have been more successful if he didn't feel so strongly about bringing back Arnold. Maybe focusing more on the human characters would have resulted in a better film. Regardless of that, he said that he was reasonably happy with the film. How was the 2019 sequel received? The reception was bad in some ways, but better in others. The film netted a 70% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, while audiences rated it at 82%. The real issue was that it bombed in the box office, netting $62.2 million domestically and $261.1 million worldwide. That might not seem too bad, but with the film's $185 million budget, it ended up losing $122.6 million.
That is not your father. Come with me or you're dead in the next 30 seconds.
That is a huge loss despite it having more positive reviews than the film's predecessors. There were fans who were vocal about their disappointment in the movie. They range from calling out its wokeness to critiques on one of its central themes. One breakdown of the film pointed out that its exploration of what separates humans and machines was too simple, especially when other media has done so since the early Terminator films. While the film has its humans, Sarah Connor and Danny Ramos, it also has a cold calculating machine in the form of the Rev 9 model Terminator. Then it has Grace, a mechanically enhanced human soldier, and Carl, a T-800 model who learned to be like a human somewhere in the middle. Yet the film still drew a firm line in the sand to separate humans and machines, like we've seen since the beginning. Having something a little more nuanced could have paid dividends. Has James Cameron expressed any other regrets with the franchise? Yes, he mentioned regret about the initial trilogy. After directing the first two successful films, he stepped away from the franchise, leaving someone else to pick up the reins and finish the trilogy. He said at that point, he felt he'd evolved beyond the films, not wanting to participate in that world anymore.
Why not just let me have her?
Because we're not machines, you metal mother.
Arnold spoke about the director's conflict, mentioning that he wanted the film to succeed, but that he also wanted it to fail. The actor hinted that studio constraints kept the director away, mentioning that he did want to return to some degree. The main regret Cameron expressed was that he kept seeing the franchise get resurrected. This is especially evident with how the movies that followed has received mixed reviews at best, never living up to the originals. He expressed another big regret he had with the franchise. In an interview with Esquire, he expressed that his biggest regret with the franchise was its heavy fetishization of guns. And looking at real-world events and reflecting on his career, he said that he doesn't think he'd want to make those films, at least not in the same way he originally had. When he expressed that, he emphasized that point with the original Terminator and its sequel.
When this is all over, I am going to kill you.
I understand.
It seems he feels some responsibility for contributing to the gun culture that exists today. That makes sense, given the amount of mass shootings America sees each year. One could see how the film glorifies guns. With firefights in both movies and much heavier gun use in Judgment Day, the connection could be made. It's a different take that you don't hear from many directors. Could this outlook on guns affect the franchise in the future? If James Cameron gets involved in the franchise again, that's certainly a possibility. If we examine Terminator Dark Fate, we could see the slight shift in the type of action the franchise could explore. The 2019 film relies more on hand-to-hand or hand-to-blade combat than previous installments of the franchise. How is that the case when you have robots against people? The answer is an enhanced human and a converted Terminator. Those two battle against the more advanced versions of the Terminator, the Rev 9. If we get another sequel down the road, we could get more bot-on-bot action. Although the film took a more choreographed approach with its action, it still saw heavy gun use, mostly from its human characters.
I had this nice, simple life. And now it's a nightmare.
Arnold's character did reveal a massive gun collection, joking that it was because he lived in Texas. We then saw Hamilton's Sarah Connor utilize some of those to hold her own against the villain in the final fight. With that, we can probably speculate that guns won't be leading the series anytime soon, at least if there are any new films. So does James Cameron have any plans for future Terminator films? With him saying that he moved beyond the type of movies that the original two films were, it seems unlikely. But keep in mind that he did return to produce Dark Fate. Another thing that suggests he may have at least one more film in him is his response on the Smartless podcast, in that he expressed wanting to explore more of the AI in Skynet, saying that if he were to direct a new Terminator film, that would be his focus. That could be an interesting way to subvert the genre and franchise expectations. It would also let him expand on the franchise without relying heavily on guns. While fans might miss seeing humans, robots, and more robots clash, exploring the AI aspect of the universe could present some much-needed novelty.
How do we win? We win by keeping you alive.
But how could this work? Perhaps he could focus on the moment Skynet becomes self-aware. Maybe the film could show scientists' attempts to rein in the beast they created. Maybe he could show the war from the AI's perspective and make audiences more sympathetic to the machines. Although he has expressed a fair amount of regret regarding the Terminator franchise, one could probably say that James Cameron still has love for his creation. After all, he did say he never regretted making the films. Although he has to live with the consequences of what he's created, he still enjoyed the process of making them as an exercise in filmmaking. Perhaps he'll return to helm another film and give the original films the trilogy ending they deserve. Which Terminator movie is your favorite? Would you want to see a Skynet film? Let us know and we'll catch you next time.